So, good morning. Welcome to everyone. Hoping we're all there and everyone's having a good weekend. Not that it feels like a weekend, but happy Easter weekend for those of you that are celebrating Easter. I would just like to say welcome to any new viewers, and to those that have been joining me, welcome back. So today we're going to follow on. I've completed the two ones that we spoke about, thriving in the hurricane. Today's presentation, you'll see there's a few slides that are repeated, certainly in this initial first 20 or so slides of the about 110 slides in this presentation. I'm going to slowly walk everyone through the presentation across the next, say, 10 sessions. Each session will be labeled 1 to 10. And we will each session will run for around 20 minutes. So there's no official start and end. I'll kind of find a natural place to end at around 20 minutes or so. I've decided to focus on self-awareness. I think it's one of the pillars of emotional intelligence, certainly the most important pillar, because if we don't start with self-awareness, we'll see a slide later on that speaks to it, but if we don't start with ourselves, we continually end up blaming everyone else for our problems, and we don't take responsibility or accountability for any things that are going on in our life. So today's session is going to cover a lot of things like self-awareness, not today, but certainly this whole series will cover a whole lot of questions like who am I? We'll look at things like self-awareness in a lot of depth, as well as our thought processes. But I will go to a slide just now, we'll talk about it. So I just want to say welcome to Rain. I see she's joined in. Barb Stresbotowski has come in there from Scotland. She's over there doing some caring work in Scotland. So welcome. So without further ado, and I'm going to try as much as I can to try and leave a bit of time at the end of the session. I'm still not sure how to stop streaming or stop the live feed at the end of the session. So let's see how it goes. All right, let's go on to the slide. So this initial slide spoke about does a fish know it's in water. We had this, so if you haven't been part of this presentation before, it was just a nice question. Sorry, I've been running on the treadmill just before this, so I might have to keep wiping my face every now and again, so please excuse me. Physical wellness is much important as mental health. So does a fish know it's in water? The question I posed was around fish are brought up in water, they wouldn't even know the difference, so they wouldn't even know they're in water. And in much the same way, we also don't know that we're in water because in our mental streams and our emotional streams. So we find ourselves caught up in this without even knowing about it till we move out of it, or someone introduces us to the opportunity to move out of it. So I wanted to just check if, I'm just hoping, it just seems like there's a lag on my computer. I'm hoping that this is posting okay, but I'm not sure. So I'm just going to keep on going for the 20 minutes and see how it goes. So let me go on to the first slide. So the first slide speaks about exactly what we've just been speaking about. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because we have covered it in the first two sessions, but the fish wouldn't even know if it's wet because it would seem to be stuck in this water. I'm just going to quickly just check if this feed's working because it says it's going. So let's hope it's going. It just looks like there's a bit of a lag on my side. So I don't know. Can any of you give me the thumbs up if it's actually streaming? Hoping so, but I'm going to just carry on because on my side the feedback's not coming back as though it's streaming. So let's just keep going. Okay, there we go. Barbara said it's all good, so thank you, but I'm getting nothing on my side. My little feedback screen has stopped. But perfect, so thanks to Stack for checking in. So I'm just going to keep going. So like I said, so a fish doesn't know it's in water. There's another great story about a frog that was caught up in he was born in a little pool in the middle of a deep jeep track in the forest. And as he grew up, this tadpole grew up into a small frog, and all he could do is just jump forwards and backwards in this deep jeep rut. And he had no idea there was a whole other world out there until a frog came along from the top of the land and then looked down and said, "What are you doing down there?" The guy said, "Well, this is my world." And then the top frog said, "But there's a whole world out here." So he had no idea that there was a world going on outside there until someone actually informed him. So that's a little bit about what I'm trying to achieve here today. So I asked the question early on as well, what will it take for us to evolve? And there's a number of things, and certainly one of the most important things is psychological flexibility, together with a huge amount of understanding and self-awareness. So my intentions with this presentation is to take you on a personal journey of discovery, to certainly mess with your existing paradigms. I really want us to shake up our belief systems. Whenever someone comes to me for coaching or for therapy or counseling or consulting, and they sit down in this chair, I often say to them they have to be prepared to suspend disbelief. if we enter things with a closed mind, we aren't able to take in anything. If we think we're an expert, we'll never be able to take in any new information. So I want to mess with your existing paradigms. I want you to challenge your belief systems. I want you to think deeply about some of the stuff I introduced to you, and just reflect on it between sessions. I want to shake up your brains a little. Like I said, every time we encounter some new information, I believe our brains have got opportunities to create new neural pathways so that we can change this habitual way of thinking, because it's not in this talk, but I think it's an interesting thing to discuss right now. But we can discover new ways of thinking. We can start new paths, but we become so addicted to certain ways of thinking that everything about us responds to life in a certain way. But we can learn new tricks. You can teach an old dog new tricks. Our brain, due to neuroplasticity, we are able to create new neural pathways and whole new paradigms. But you have to remember that neural pathway, that habitual way of thinking, has developed into a freeway or a highway. So we constantly keep thinking a certain way. And in order to develop a new way of thinking, we have to carry on walking down this pathway like a footpath in a veld that would slowly become a footpath, generate into a jeep track, and slowly become a gravel road. That road then has to become a highway. Okay. So I want to shake up your brains a little, maybe even confuse the hell out of you. And that'll be good, because it'll mean that you're going to start thinking in new directions. So as those of you that watch me will understand that where the analogy of the hurricane comes from. So some of my expectations and outcomes of this talk are to introduce and understand self-awareness, to improve your self-management, to introduce and understand the role of language, thoughts, and thought processes. I think we fail to understand or believe or realize rather how important language is and what comes out of our mouths and the words that we use, etc. We'll talk about this in one of the later sessions, but language was supposedly created for us to become more intelligent, to be more helpful, but we've created so many links to words, etc., and language has actually dumbed us down quite a bit. And then I want to introduce mindfulness and some key mindfulness concepts. This is over these next few sessions. It will not be part of this session, but over a number of sessions that we're going to be running. This will definitely help you to improve your relationships with your thoughts and our feelings. I would hazard a hypothesis that most of us have a disastrous relationship with our thinking and our feelings. And we have to become a lot closer to our thoughts and feelings rather than trying to run away from them. Then I want to introduce 6 key contributors to psychological inflexibility. Certainly in acceptance and commitment therapy, we speak about inflexibility as what creates mental illness, and it's this inflexibility. We don't really like the word mental illness, and we prefer psychological inflexibility. And then I'll look at some of the 6 key contributors to greater psychological flexibility, and all of this is going to lead to improved well-being and vitality. This one I'm just going to touch on again because there's quite a few new people that have joined here. So this is the mind-body connection: thoughts, feelings, physiology, and behavior. Whatever we think about creates a certain emotion in our bodies, will make us act in a certain way, and our bodies will respond physiologically to that reaction. And again, we can intervene at any level here. Emotions are the most difficult one to access because most people trap these or repress them quite deep under the surface. The easiest access for a psychologist, for example, would be your thoughts and your behavior, to change your thinking and your behavior, or to change the relationships over here. And a doctor, or as I said, some of you that self-medicate can look after your physiology here. And this will also impact the system, but it won't change the system. It will merely change it temporarily. Okay, I want to start you with Maslow's hierarchy. And like I said, if you've just joined, sorry, I'm sweating. I've literally 15 minutes ago got off the treadmill and had a shower and haven't cooled down yet, so please forgive me. So Maslow's hierarchy we've all introduced, whether you've done Psych 101 or you learned about this at school. But essentially we all have to kind of slowly move up through this hierarchy to eventually get to a point of self-actualization from our physiological needs, our safety needs, our social needs. So many of us right now are looking after our physiological and our safety needs where we're sitting now with this lockdown. But essentially we have to leave. And sometimes we can't physically leave the herd, but we have to be able to mentally at least leave the herd and start thinking freely in order for us to achieve self-actualization. So a lot of this talk around self-awareness, we will never reach self-actualization if we don't have self-awareness and we don't have self-realization. We need both of those to achieve self-actualization. So just as I mentioned earlier on, or alluded to, these are the 4 pillars of EQ, and we're not talking about EQ here per se, but I just wanted to show you why I thought self-awareness was extremely important to engage with today, or to start the presentation, or to call the presentation Self-Awareness 101. Your 4 basic pillars of emotional intelligence is self-awareness, self-management, then relationship awareness, and then relationship management. So we start with this core area of self-awareness as the most, it's imperative rather that we use this as a starting point for anything. And we have to start with ourselves. So this is a very, I love this slide when I'm working with big groups because one can process this also for a long amount of time. But the question I pose to you or anyone viewing this video is, do we even know who we are? Do we know who we are? Have we ever sat down and asked who I am? And so many of us have no idea who we are. And the question I ask as well is, am I who I think I am? Am I who I think I am? Are we who we think we are? And I get varying answers to this question from the groups, as I said, that I've worked with. And people say, some of them say, yes, we are. Some of them say, no, we're not. And this is quite a confusing one, and I always have a chuckle around it. So try and stay with me here. We are who we think we are. We are exactly who we think we are. All right? So if you think you're a loser, everything about you will act like a loser. And we'll talk about this in a later slide as well, how the body doesn't know the difference between reality and imagination. But we are who we think we are. Is that who we really are? And the answer is no, that's not who we are. So we are who we think we are, but is that who you really are? And the answer is no. And we'll come back to that now. Or am I who others think I am? So many of us are like chameleons. We just put on our masks and we go out there and we just present whoever we're seeing, whoever we're interacting with, whether it's our spouses, our children, our bosses, our colleagues. We just put on whatever mask we need to in order to be liked, in order to be accepted. But then I ask the question, who are you who do you go home to? Who are you when you're alone with yourself? And many people don't know who they are when they're alone with themselves. I think that's sometimes why the lockdown becomes tough for those that struggle to be with themselves when they're alone, because they don't know which mask to wear when they're by themselves. So some of us are who others think they are, and others are who they think they are themselves. We are neither of this. So let me just try and jump into the next slide. At a conscious level, all right, at a conscious level, it's a little bit like an iceberg. So we have the conscious mind. This is the part that the world sees that sticks out. But underneath the surface is a much bigger world, your subconscious mind. Okay, and then deeper down is unconscious mind. We're not going to go there. That would be more hypnosis, etc. So we're not even going to go there. But we're just happy to talk in here at the subconscious level. So at a conscious level, I am who I think I am. And then I said to you, you are who you think you are, but that's not who you are. Why not? Because if you jump into the subconscious is actually who you are, all right? This is where all the rules and things that you've learned from your past and your childhood and your parents or your granny or your grandpa or your teacher or you're the bullies at school, someone put all this stuff into your head, programs, I call them programs or implants into your head. And So this is much bigger than this, and there's a huge amount of unconscious drivers that push down from under the surface and make you act the way you do at a conscious level. All right. So just and at the risk of getting into a big debate here right now, if you're a perfectionist at the conscious level, here at the unconscious level, there's a huge amount of I'm imperfect or I'm not good enough or I'm not okay, and this is an unconscious driver that makes you act the way you do at a conscious level. So, without trying to confuse you too much, so, am I who I think I am? Yes. Is that who you really are? No. This is who you really are at a subconscious level. Is this who you really are? No, not either. Why? Because this is just an unconscious driver or a program or an implant that's been planted there by, as I said, by someone in your environment. It's not who you are either. These are merely thoughts. Both the conscious and the subconscious mind belong to the ego. And so these are just thoughts, and you can actually move or pull back, and that's a big part of this talk, is how do I become the observer of my thoughts rather than fitting into my thought stream. And all this will become clearer in subsequent sessions. But it's extremely important that we understand that just because I think I'm imperfect or just because I think I'm perfect doesn't make me perfect. It's just merely a thought. So we will step more into this as we go along. And as I said, you're welcome afterwards to post in my taper, and I will answer your comments as much as I can, or if we have to, then we'll must inbox, but I'll try and answer it, but it's quite complex questions, but they will be answered across the course of the series. Okay, just again, this is a slide that we used in that earlier introductory presentation. I asked the question, what would happen without these in our lives? Without bouncers, outside clubs, without doormen, without parents at a kiddie's or a teenager's party, there'd be mayhem, there'd be fights, there'd be chaos, there'd be all sorts of well, there wouldn't be any rules. It would be chaos. So the question I ask is do we have dormant in our mental party? But before I do that, I want to just ask you, and I'm going to pause for a full minute. And I want you, wherever you're watching this presentation from, to take a minute. I'm going to watch the timer now and take a full minute. And I'm giving you no instructions, and I just want you to sit still and to see what transpires. And then we'll talk a bit about it afterwards, starting now. Okay, I didn't actually time it, but I'm guessing we were around about 60 seconds. And now, as I said, I don't necessarily have feedback here from you, but my question was, what happened there? How was it? And when someone reflects on it, they often say that was really difficult, that was very long, that was confusing because you didn't tell us what to do, and that was the whole point of it. The point of the exercise was just to sit still for a minute and see if you could sit still for a minute. Then another question I ask groups I've worked with is, how many of you managed to stay in the room while we did that minute? How many of you actually physically got up and left, because this is not a lecture hall that I would normally be busy with, so people can't get up and walk out, but how many of you got up and took a quick break and did something? How many of you went away mentally into something you've got to be doing after this session, something you were doing before this, but you didn't actually stay focused with the instruction, which was just to stop for a minute and just be with yourself? Okay, so it is extremely difficult to do this exercise, and even if you watch these rugby games or the soccer games nowadays, whenever they have a minute silence, I've noticed it's between 10 and 15 seconds. They no longer even wait for a full minute because people can't wait that long. So this slide also was part of my initial presentation. Are there dormant at your mental party? How many of us check what's going on inside our heads? Because if you weren't able to sit still for that minute, my argument would be your brain or your mental party looks something like this, or like this person over here, where things are just not calm. You're not able to sit still for a minute. You're not able to just be calm, stare into a fire. Okay. So I asked this question in my initial one as well. Have you become human hamsters on a mental treadmill? And apologies again to those that have watched the first session. After the slide 20 or so, there won't be any. There should be very few repeated slides. But have we become human hamsters on a mental treadmill? Are we going through our landscapes mindlessly? We have no idea what we want from our life. And this is so important to work with a coach or a psychologist or someone that can guide you as to what are my value systems and what do I actually want to achieve. It's not goals. This is about our values. Because if we're not leading a value-laden life, our stress and suffering will be high. The minute we start leading a value-laden life, our stress and suffering go down. Okay. But most of us are not leading or achieving values in our life. So I briefly introduced autopilot, and when we're on autopilot, we're kind of trapped inside of our brains, and there's no one driving the airplane, and this means mindlessness, zombie apocalypse, and a herd mentality. Most of us spend our days on autopilot, not knowing where we're going, and we just know we have to go to work, we know we've got to make our money, we know exactly what we need to do. Everything's routine, from our showering to our brushing our teeth to getting into bed to we have routine. And when we're on autopilot, that's exactly what happens. So then we briefly touched into this thing about mindfulness as an introduction in this first session. And as I said, this is going to be the first session of about 10, maybe even 12 sessions across the lockdown period. This is how our minds work, and this is how children's minds work. And this is why a child will often be saying, or a dog, a child will often say, look, there's an aeroplane, the 10th aeroplane that's flown over. They'll say, look at that aeroplane, daddy or mommy, look at that aeroplane. And we can't even see the aeroplane because we've got so much clutter in our brains that we have no idea what the child is even seeing. And that's why it's so important when we go through life to become like a child. And I often say to parents, even just while we're sitting now in lockdown, Some of them have never known how to play with their children because the parent thinks they've got to dictate play. But you don't. Just ask your child what they want to do and just follow them. It might seem like the most mindless activity, but the child is getting such benefit from it. Okay, we've got about 5 minutes left in this presentation. So many things contribute to mindlessness, and this can be all sorts of stuff. If you're very busy, if you're running around without knowing what you're doing, it's constant. If you're not able to sit still, all those things contribute to mindlessness. And when that happens, we end up being in survival mode. And what is survival mode? It's fight or flight. It's crisis mode. As I said, all our solutions really just narrow down, and everything just becomes extremely focused on escape, ultimately survival. And because one thinks we're going to die. I mean, that's we'll see a slide later on in these presentations that speaks to that. And as I called it, I've done talks before where I've called my talk the zombification of our species. So I often say, I'm going to go to about 2 more slides and we'll end there. So I often say, we have people that want me to do talks on stress management or time management or organizational management, but none of these are important. And I've come to realize everything comes back to self-management. It is not, we cannot manage time. Time just the clock keeps ticking. We can't stop the clock. So we have to learn how to manage ourselves. So all of these things, time management, diary management, client relationship management, stress management, life balance, they are all about this, which is why it's so important for us to stop and start focusing on self-awareness. Okay. And then I'm going to leave you with this. I think I'm going to stop on this slide and say to you, how often do we simply sit and think about what we're thinking about? I brought this up briefly in that first session on the hurricane, but I want you to think about how often do we simply sit and think about what we're thinking about. Like that minute where we just stop, just to check in with yourself and go, where are my thoughts? How am I feeling? How's my body doing? And yeah, I think I'm going to leave you with that thought, and then I'm going to end the stream here. I think you're welcome to, as I said, to add any comments, share the video, because I notice it does store the video onto Facebook now. So please tell your friends about it, tell your colleagues, and I will do this every morning right across. I think the only morning I won't be doing it at 9 o'clock might be Sunday, because the Easter Bunny is coming, and I've got 2 young children. So I will most probably be doing it on Sunday afternoon. But I'll put some notices on my Facebook page, but I'll run it across every morning at 9 o'clock. If I can't make it 9 o'clock, I will just slot it in somewhere else and let you know, because I'm seeing clients in between. But in the moment, it'll be 9 o'clock for every morning over the next probably at least 10 days. All right, so thank you for joining me. Like I said, if you liked it, please leave some comments. Those comments are always good and keep me going, and I'll try and answer any questions you might have. If you've got deeper questions that you want to ask that perhaps you don't want everyone else to know, you're welcome to private message me through the Facebook page, and I'll be happy to answer. All right, so thanks for coming, and I'm going to be closing off the stream now.